Have you ever been around a woman and felt that quiet spark but couldn't tell whether she felt it too? That uncertainty is exactly where most men get stuck. In this conversation, we're going to break down 3 subtle signs that a woman is already experiencing attraction, and the third one is so subtle that most men overlook it even when it's happening right in front of them. Welcome back to Feminine Desire. A lot of men experience this same confusion. They feel something shift in a conversation, a sense of connection or chemistry, but they can't quite decode what it means. Later, they replay the moment in their mind, wondering if they missed a clear signal. If that has ever happened to you, it doesn't mean you lack awareness or confidence. It simply means no one ever explained the quiet, non-verbal language through which female attraction often expresses itself. Men and women don't usually experience attraction in the same way. For many men, it feels direct and fast. You see someone, you feel something, and you want to act on it. But for many women, attraction develops in layers. It builds gradually, almost like testing emotional water before stepping in deeper. There is observation first, then curiosity, then comfort, and only then does desire begin to surface more clearly. Because of this, women rarely express attraction in obvious ways. They don't usually announce it. Instead, they communicate it through subtle behavior shifts, eye contact that lingers slightly longer, changes in tone, small gestures, and body positioning that most people overlook. These signals are quiet, but they are consistent when you know what to look for. Think back for a moment. Have you ever realized too late that a woman might have been interested in you? Maybe she always found reasons to talk to you, or laughed a little more warmly at your jokes, or stayed near you without any clear reason. At the time, it probably felt casual. Only later did you start questioning it. This experience is extremely common, not because men are unaware, but because they were never taught how these signals actually work. So let's slow things down and break this into 3 clear signs of emerging attraction. First sign, physical touch. One of the earliest and most revealing signals is touch, but not random or accidental contact. This is the kind of touch that feels slightly intentional, even if it appears casual on the surface. It might be a light touch on your arm during laughter, a brief hand placement that lasts just a moment longer than necessary, or a playful gesture like adjusting something on your clothing. None of it feels dramatic, and that's exactly why it's important. When attraction begins to activate, the body often seeks subtle ways to reduce distance. Touch becomes a natural bridge. It's not calculated, it's instinctive. In moments of comfort and emotional ease, physical boundaries soften. For example, imagine you're in a relaxed conversation with a woman. She laughs at something you say and lightly touches your arm. The contact is brief, but something about it feels intentional. Later, it happens again and again. Individually, each moment seems small, but together they form a pattern. Psychologically, this is linked to comfort and bonding responses in the brain. When someone feels safe and emotionally engaged, physical closeness becomes more natural. Touch is often one of the earliest signs that comfort is turning into attraction. But here's the key. One touch means very little on its own. Patterns are what matter. Repeated, unnecessary touch during interaction is often a quiet indicator that she enjoys your presence more than she is verbally expressing. Second sign, eye contact and gaze patterns. The second sign is hidden in plain sight, in her eyes. Eye contact is one of the most powerful forms of nonverbal communication. While words can be controlled, the eyes often reveal emotional shifts before anything else does. When attraction begins to develop, eye contact changes in rhythm. She looks at you, holds your gaze just a bit longer than expected, then looks away. A moment later, she returns again. This cycle repeats naturally. It's not about constant staring, it's about return. Coming back to look at you again and again throughout the interaction. Another subtle layer is softness in expression. The eyes become more relaxed, more open, and more emotionally engaged. There is often a gentle smile paired with brief downward glances before reconnecting eye contact again. This rhythm, look, soften, glance away, return, is one of the most common unconscious patterns of growing attraction. It reflects a tension that is no longer neutral. It is emotionally involved. There is also a neurological element involved. When people experience interest or attraction, the body can respond with pupil dilation, an involuntary reaction linked to emotional stimulation. While this cannot be consciously controlled or measured in real time, it supports a broader truth. The eyes often reflect internal emotional states more honestly than words. You may also notice something else. When she is interested, she listens differently. She remembers small details, reacts more emotionally to your stories, and stays mentally engaged in a way that feels focused and present. That level of attention is not random. It signals investment. The bigger pattern. When you put these signals together, light touch, repeated eye contact, emotional attention, you begin to see a clearer picture. Attraction is rarely expressed through one dramatic moment. Instead, it unfolds through a collection of small behaviors that build on each other over time. Most men miss these signals not because they are invisible, but because they are subtle and quiet. Once you understand them, your perception of social interaction changes completely. Situations that once felt confusing start to make sense. Moments you once dismissed begin to stand out clearly in hindsight. The goal here isn't to overanalyze every interaction or search for hidden meaning in everything. It's to become aware of patterns that already exist naturally in human behavior. Because once you recognize these signals, you stop guessing and start understanding. Human beings are constantly sending out subtle signals even when they aren't saying a word. Once you learn to notice them, social interactions stop feeling confusing and start becoming far more understandable. And if you're finding value in this conversation, take a moment to like and subscribe to Feminine Desire. It helps more people access deeper insights into human behavior and relationships. Now we move into the third signal, and this one is arguably the most powerful because unlike touch or eye contact, which can sometimes happen casually or without meaning, this signal usually involves intention. It's subtle, but once you recognize it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. It's the shift in space. When a woman begins to feel attraction growing, she often does something very specific. She creates a sense of privacy within a public environment. Not in an obvious or dramatic way, but in a quiet, almost unnoticeable shift that separates you from the rest of the group for a moment. Think about most social settings. At parties, people naturally stay in groups. At restaurants, conversations happen across tables. At work or social events, interaction is shared and open. The space itself is collective. But when attraction begins to form, something changes. She may start finding small reasons to move the interaction slightly away from everyone else. Not enough to draw attention, but enough to create a moment that feels more personal, more contained, more focused between just the two of you. This is the signal most men completely miss. She creates privacy where there was none. It doesn't usually look like anything extreme. There's no grand gesture, no obvious separation. Instead, it appears in small invitations. She might ask you to come here for a second to show you something. She might suggest stepping aside to talk. She might lower her voice slightly so the conversation becomes just between you and her, even if others are nearby. On the surface, these moments seem harmless, but psychologically, they matter more than they appear. When someone is drawn to another person, they often begin forming what psychologists might describe as micro-environments, small, temporary spaces where interaction becomes more focused and emotionally direct. These moments reduce social noise and allow connection to deepen without the pressure of a group dynamic. In those private pockets of interaction, something important happens. Attention sharpens, emotional awareness increases, and both people get a clearer sense of how the other responds when the environment feels more personal. In simple terms, it becomes a subtle form of testing, not in a negative or manipulative sense, but as a natural way of gauging comfort, presence, and connection. For many women especially, emotional safety plays a key role in attraction. Creating a slightly more private moment allows her to observe how you respond when the interaction becomes more intimate in tone. Do you stay calm? Do you engage naturally? Do you maintain presence without overthinking it? These responses matter far more than most men realize. Let's look at a simple example. Imagine you're at a social gathering. The room is full of people, conversations overlapping, music in the background. You've been casually talking to a woman in the group setting, nothing intense, just natural interaction. Then she says something like, "Come here, I want to show you something," and leads you slightly away from the group. Maybe it's a photo on her phone, maybe it's something across the room, or maybe it's just a quieter spot to talk. Nothing about it seems significant in the moment, but once you step away, the dynamic changes. The conversation feels more direct. Eye contact becomes more consistent. There's less distraction, more presence. The interaction becomes noticeably more personal. That shift is the signal. It's not about the object, the location, or the excuse she uses. It's about creating a moment that belongs more to the two of you than to the environment around you. And this kind of thing happens constantly in everyday life. A suggestion to take a short walk, a reason to step outside for fresh air, a question asked in a lower voice. A moment where she positions herself slightly closer while speaking, so the rest of the world fades into the background. Each of these small actions reduces distance, social and emotional, between two people. But here's what most people miss. When a woman creates that small private space, she is not just moving physically closer. She is also observing your response to that shift. She is noticing whether you remain relaxed, whether you stay engaged, whether you maintain ease without forcing the interaction in any direction. Attraction develops best in calm presence, not in pressure, not in overthinking, not in performance. That's why awareness changes everything. Once you start noticing these shifts, you stop reacting blindly, you become present, you respond naturally instead of forcing outcomes or trying to decode every second. And when both people meet in that calm space, the interaction flows on its own. Pause for a moment and think about your own experiences. Have you ever had someone subtly pull you aside during a conversation? Or lowered their voice just to speak to you directly? Or suggested moving somewhere quieter even when nothing required it? If so, you may have already experienced this third signal without realizing its meaning at the time. Understanding this isn't about overanalyzing people or turning social interaction into a puzzle. It's about awareness, recognizing how human beings naturally express interest in subtle, nonverbal ways. Because when you understand that, everything becomes simpler. You stop guessing what's happening, you start noticing what's already happening, and that shift alone changes the way you move through social situations. Attraction isn't usually loud or dramatic. It doesn't begin with grand declarations. More often, it starts quietly, through small gestures, lingering attention, and subtle changes in space and behavior. Once you can see that clearly, you stop feeling uncertain about where you stand in a moment. You begin to recognize when connection is forming naturally. And when that happens, your response becomes simple. Stay present, stay relaxed, and allow the interaction to unfold without forcing it. Because real connection doesn't need to be chased. It only needs to be noticed. In the end, attraction is rarely loud or obvious. It reveals itself through subtle signals like touch, eye contact, and the creation of small, private moments. When you stop overthinking and start noticing these quiet cues, social interactions become clearer and more natural. The real power isn't in chasing anything, but in being present enough to recognize when genuine connection is already beginning.